Carrier decks are busy places. Everything moves fast, everything has a purpose, and everyone knows what belongs there. So when a tailless, jet-black aircraft rolled up to the catapult with no cockpit and no pilot anywhere near it, the crew knew they were looking at something different. It lined up on its own. It held position on its own. And when the catapult fired, it launched cleanly into the night without a single human steering it. One of the hardest maneuvers in naval aviation happened with the same calm precision you'd expect from a veteran pilot. What unsettled people wasn't a mistake. It was the complete lack of one. The X-47B behaved like a fully trained carrier aviator, and it did it without asking permission. That raised a question the Navy wasn't prepared for. What if the future shows up before the system is ready to use it? This video breaks down how Northrop's X-47B became the stealth drone that flew too far ahead, why the Navy went with the safer MQ-25, and what that choice means for unmanned warfare. Before we begin, hit subscribe so you never miss stories like this. By the late 2000s, the Navy was trying to map out what its next air wing should look like, and one requirement stood out. They wanted an aircraft with no cockpit and no pilot that could operate on a carrier with the same reliability as a trained aviator. That's not a small ask. A carrier deck moves, tilts, and drops unpredictably. Landings happen in tight windows measured in feet, not yards. Even experienced pilots get waved off or miss the wire. Still, the Navy wanted a drone that could launch, recover, refuel, and cycle through missions without constant human input. This became UCASD, a demonstration program meant to show whether an unmanned system could eventually take over long-range, high-risk jobs normally assigned to manned strike fighters. Strategic pressure only made the need clearer. Carrier groups were being pushed farther from shore by missile threats, especially from China, which meant strike aircraft needed more range than they realistically had. A stealthy, unmanned platform with long endurance and no pilot to protect looked like the obvious solution. But designing the perfect answer on a slide is easy. Proving it on a moving flight deck packed with jets, crew, and zero room for error is something completely different. Northrop Grumman responded to the UCASD challenge with something the Navy had never operated before. A jet-powered flying wing with no vertical stabilizers, no forward fuselage, and no place to put a human even if they wanted to. The X-47B was 62 feet wide, shaped for low observability, and carried all of its sensors and equipment inside a sealed body to avoid exposing radar-reflective surfaces. Unlike earlier drones that relied on joystick inputs from pilots sitting in ground stations, the X-47B didn't wait for hand-holding. You didn't steer it. You instructed it. It calculated the rest through onboard autonomy, stabilization software, and precise algorithms developed from years of B-2 stealth bomber research. Once a mission was uploaded, the aircraft executed climbs, descents, carrier patterns, and brake turns by itself. Its flight logic didn't try to imitate a human. It aimed to outperform one. The design wasn't meant to be a science fair project. It was a blueprint for a true unmanned strike aircraft. Internal bays meant it could eventually carry guided weapons without breaking stealth. Its blended wing body reduced drag and maximized range. And its flight control system, refined over thousands of simulation hours, was built for repeatability. Human pilots fatigue. Algorithms don't. From the moment the X-47B left the runway at Edwards in 2011, engineers knew they were holding something different from the Reapers and Global Hawks the world was used to. This wasn't a remote-controlled eye in the sky. It was the first real attempt at an autonomous combat aircraft that could operate from a carrier. And the tests that followed only made the distinction clearer. Carrier operations are the last place you expect firsts. Everything on deck is choreographed to reduce risk. New aircraft usually take years to work up to even partial carrier certification. The X-47B didn't behave like a new aircraft. Its proving run started on land, where engineers rehearsed catapult tension loads and shore-based arrestments to ensure the drone could withstand the violent forces of carrier flight. It moved across the deck under automatic taxi control, stopping exactly where deck handlers signaled. Not by reading hand motions, but by interpreting digital commands through ship-to-aircraft communication links. Then the record-setting moments began. In May 2013, The X-47B became the first unmanned aircraft ever catapulted from an aircraft carrier. It launched from USS George H.W. Bush, climbed cleanly, and joined the carrier's air traffic pattern without a single manual correction. The precision wasn't luck. Its navigation system used shipboard beacons and GPS updates to fly the same profile a Navy pilot trains years to master. 2 months later, on July 10, 2013, it performed the first fully autonomous arrested landing at sea. No remote pilot flaring at the last second. No commands adjusting throttle. The drone interpreted wind, deck motion, and glide slope inputs, then hit the third wire with a trap so accurate that flight deck crews compared it to a seasoned aviator. The streak continued. It executed carrier touch-and-goes. It performed wave-offs on command, adjusting power and altitude instantly. In 2014, it completed integrated flight operations with FA-18 aboard USS Theodore Roosevelt, proving it could share pattern space with manned jets without causing chaos. And then came the breakthrough that convinced many observers that the Navy had just jumped a decade into the future. On April 22, 2015, the X-47B became the first unmanned aircraft to conduct autonomous aerial refueling. Using a standard Navy tanker, it extended its range without pilot intervention, holding formation with a stability that human pilots openly admitted was difficult to match. By the end of UCASD testing, the X-47B had done everything skeptics insisted a drone couldn't do. It trapped, refueled, coordinated, launched, and adapted. It didn't behave like a prototype. It behaved like a fleet aircraft. And that, ironically, is where the trouble started. After the X-47B's flawless demonstrations, the expectation inside defense circles was simple. The Navy now had proof that a stealthy, autonomous strike aircraft could live on a carrier. UCASD would evolve into U-Class, a program to field a next-generation unmanned attacker with long-range, internal weapons, and the ability to penetrate defended airspace. But as U-Class requirements began to take shape, the tone shifted. Intelligence officials wanted high-end stealth and deep strike. Other branches pushed for a cheaper surveillance platform. Budget analysts warned that giving a drone long-range strike authority might reduce the need for certain manned aircraft. Naval aviation leadership worried about ceding too much autonomy to an unmanned platform that could theoretically operate with minimal oversight. Behind closed doors, the hesitation grew clearer. A drone that takes off, lands, refuels, and executes missions without constant human inputs isn't just a new aircraft, it's a new hierarchy. If it works too well, it forces the institution to rethink pilot training pipelines, carrier deck procedures, and procurement priorities. And the X-47B hadn't just worked, it had excelled. By 2016, the debate ended with a pivot. U-Class shifted into C-Bars, a program focused not on stealth strike, but on developing a carrier-based tanker to relieve the Super Hornets from the buddy tanking burden that consumed up to a third of their sorties. It was a safer mission, a clearer mission, one that didn't rewrite doctrine overnight. On paper, it made sense. Increasing fighter range solved a pressing operational need. But in practical terms, it also shelved the very capability the X-47B had just proven. A long-range unmanned platform that could do what manned jets struggled to accomplish. The Navy hadn't rejected autonomy because it failed. It rejected autonomy because it succeeded faster than the system could adjust. When the Navy shifted its priority from strike to tanking, the competition reset. Instead of asking who could build the most advanced unmanned aircraft, the question became who could deliver a reliable, deck-compatible tanker with minimal risk. Boeing stepped in with a design that looked nothing like the stealthy flying wings proposed under U-Class. The MQ-25 Stingray was built around one purpose: extend the range of the carrier air wing. Its airframe was conventional by comparison. A narrow fuselage, V-tail, and dorsal engine intake replaced the futuristic profiles of earlier candidates. The design emphasized stability, maintainability, and simplified integration with existing deck crews. The aircraft carried up to 15,000 pounds of fuel and used a standard hose and drogue system, making it immediately compatible with Super Hornets, Growlers, and eventually the F-35C. In August 2018, Boeing won the contract after demonstrating lower developmental risk and a clearer path to deployment. The Navy needed a tanker to eliminate the FA-18's heavy buddy tanking burden, which consumed a substantial portion of its flight hours and accelerated wear on an already strained fleet. The MQ-25 didn't change doctrine. It filled a gap. It supported manned aircraft instead of competing with them. And that, for the Navy, was the point. The MQ-25 filled an immediate operational need, but it also represented a narrower vision of what unmanned aviation could be. The Stingray's range advantage was real. It allowed Super Hornets and F-35Cs to push hundreds of additional miles without relying on Air Force tankers. It reduced wear on frontline fighters. And it introduced autonomous deck operations in a controlled, incremental way. But none of those gains matched the strategic leap the X-47B had already demonstrated. The X-47B featured a blended wing body with low observable shaping, giving it far smaller radar signatures than any tanker. Its internal bays were designed to eventually carry precision weapons, enabling deep strike missions beyond the range of manned fighters. The drone had already proven fully autonomous carrier landings, integrated deck operations, and the ability to refuel in flight. These abilities aligned with exactly what the Navy needed as carrier groups moved farther offshore. Long-range penetration into contested airspace, something neither Super Hornets nor unescorted tankers could reliably accomplish. With its range and stealth, the X-47B could have acted as the opening wave in high-threat scenarios. Instead, the Stingray anchored unmanned aviation to a support role rather than a combat role. It advanced capability, but not doctrine. It extended manned fighters' reach without challenging their primacy. The Navy gained predictability. It surrendered momentum toward a next-generation unmanned strike arm. Although the X-47B never entered production, the program didn't disappear. After its historic refueling test in 2015, both air vehicles were redesignated as research assets. Northrop's team continued refining carrier autonomy, deck handling logic, aerial refueling algorithms, and low observable maintenance processes. These technologies were folded into classified efforts related to next-generation air dominance and future carrier-based unmanned systems. Elements of the X-47B's software later informed MQ-25 deck handling trials. Its autonomous landing logic influenced future testing standards for unmanned precision recovery. Even the communication protocols developed for its shipboard integration were preserved as baseline requirements for all future Navy unmanned aircraft. Publicly, the drones retired to display. One placed at the Patuxent River Naval Air Museum, another at the USS Midway Museum. Privately, the program's technical data became a reference point for long-range unmanned designs still under development. The X-47B proved a carrier can support a stealthy, autonomous jet with precision beyond human consistency. That lesson didn't vanish. It simply shifted into programs that won't be revealed until the Navy is ready to field an aircraft that isn't just ahead of its time, but aligned with it. The X-47B proved an unmanned jet could operate from a carrier without a pilot. That changed the conversation, even if the Navy went with a safer program. The idea behind that aircraft never really went away. It's sitting in the background of every new design. Eventually, something similar will return, and this time, it won't be ahead of its moment.